Updating tonight's top stories, Donald Trump says it's clear he's won the U.S. presidential election, even though a winner won't be declared for days. He's vowed to go to the Supreme Court. Joe Biden also feeling confident, telling supporters to be patient as the vote count continues. He says he's on track to win. Despite the competing claims, officially at least, the race is too close to call. It's a fight to the finish.
Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight. And a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop.
We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted, every ballot is counted. But we're feeling good.
A closer look now with Professor Pushan Dutt from INSEAD Business School. Professor, President Trump has declared victory, as we just heard, despite key battleground states still being unclear. He's even threatened to take it to the Supreme Court. Now, the word unprecedented has been used a lot in 2020. But is that where we're at with this? Where we are now with this election?
So we do have some precedents, which is if you go back to all the way to the 2000 elections, the Supreme Court actually stepped in, stopped the vote counting, and gave the election to George Bush. So it's not completely without precedents. We should also keep in mind that Trump is not a good loser. He still complains that he lost the popular vote in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. Now, Trump is something who says the quiet part aloud. So he's been saying on the trail quite some time that he's going to be contesting all the late votes and the mail-in ballots and things like that, and that he's going to do these legal challenges. He's also boasted that the fact that he's put Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court, which means that he's likely to win all of these legal challenges. The true nightmare scenario is that if, a state like Pennsylvania is contested, you get a set of electors appointed by the governor and a set of electors appointed by the legislature. In many of these states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, the governor is Democratic, whereas the legislature is actually Republican. So then the House of Representatives picks which is the correct slate of electors. And that's going to be a long, drawn-out, nightmarish scenario.
Also, one of the big takeaways tonight is the fact that Trump just did a lot better than what the polls suggested, a hark back again to the last election. How do you think, the polls got it wrong again?
So I think we should cut them a little bit of slack. So the polls got Florida very wrong. But if you look at the rest of the states, they got it right. The states which they said are too close to call, which were within the margin of error, these are the states that we are actually waiting the results from. The other thing to realize is that they did make errors in 2016 and they sort of adjusted for these errors. These were mainly sampling errors. But then what happened was a pandemic, and the pandemic introduced two new sources of uncertainty, like who was going to turn out and how are they going to vote. Now, there is no data out there which gives them any sort of clarity on who's going to vote, how different demographics turn out, whether they vote early, mail-in votes, etc. So it's not surprising that, they didn't get all of this right. And I think also the expectations were that Biden would win in a landslide, but that was just one of the possible outcomes. So I think we all just have to be a little bit patient and cut them some slack.
Joe Biden has been preaching patience as well. He says he is on victory or on track for victory, saying that it ain't over till every vote is counted. Do you agree that he's still in with a very good chance?
So it seems trivial to say this for a democracy like the U.S., one of the world's oldest democracies, is that, yes, all votes should be counted. Now, the Trump position is that only votes that come in on election day, only those should be counted. But this is clearly not true. So, for instance, in the last election in Arizona, the Senate candidate from the Republican Party was leading on the day of the election, but a week later was overtaken by the Democrat candidate. California sometimes takes a month to actually announce the final winner. Republicans also sort of have relied heavily on mail-in ballots, late arriving ballots, because those are to a large extent sent in by the military during normal times, and that's a big base for the Republicans. So the reason why if we see this difference is because of the peculiar nature of the US. So all election rules are decided at the state level, and there are big differences between states. So Florida, for instance, can actually start processing all the early votes with sort of Florida this morning, but for Pennsylvania, we sort of don't. So I think, again, patience and, this is something which is very normal in the US.
Professor, it's also, we know it's a record voter turnout, lots of mail-in ballots still yet to be counted. Perhaps you could highlight to us, where do you think some of these battleground states, where will be won and where will be lost?
So it's interesting to note that 4 years ago, people were saying that everything runs through Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and that they're going to be key. Here we are in 2020, and that's exactly where we are. We are sort of looking at Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, there have been a couple of surprises so far in the election. One is that Arizona has flipped, and Georgia remains too close to call. So these are the states, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which I'm watching very closely, in fact, getting down into the weeds and trying to figure out what votes are sort of outstanding. So Biden still has quite a few paths to victory. So, for instance, Georgia is probably going to announce its results very soon. If that goes for Biden, then, it's very likely that it's going to be Biden. But Biden can also win if he, does not win either Pennsylvania or Georgia, if he picks up Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, etc. So there are still some permutations left for both of them. But we have to give Trump credit that in the middle of a horrific pandemic, a stagnant economy, he's actually managed to fight this battle to such a close, and he might pull it off at the end of the day.
No doubt. Thanks very much for sharing your insights, Professor Pushan Dutt there from INSEAD Business School.